Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think we can't have this conversation without addressing that, like, Gen AI is all anybody's talking about right now. Our learners don't necessarily know if they're going from system to system to learn something. We really try to keep the complexity behind the scenes.
Learning together would be something that organisations should try to do, but it also seems to be something that organisations do the least often. So today we're joined by Adina Nichols. Adina is the head of learning technology enablement at Uber, and she's got over 20 years of experience in learning and development and holds a doctorate in organisational learning and leadership. Welcome, Adina. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
20 years learning and development, and you've got a doctorate. Over that time, you would have learnt and embraced a lot of learning principles and methodologies. Are there some that have really shaped what you're doing in your career so far?
Since you mentioned it, so my academic research was based on organizational learning, which is a concept for companies on how they can use the talent of their workforce to a strategic advantage, specifically through how they're learning. So if I were to make that really simple and easy example, if you think about how employees learn, so how I learn as an individual, I get a new tool, say it's ChatGPT. I want to learn how to use it. I'm going to talk to ChatGPT. I'm going to go find a YouTube video. I'm going to get some information. But it doesn't really become a skill until I start actually using ChatGPT. And that practice and that reinforcement is what's going to make it an actual learned behavior. So at the same time, I'm excited. I've learned about ChatGPT. And so I say, Andrew, my colleague, I want to show you what I did with ChatGPT. And you might say, I want to show that to you, what I've been doing with ChatGPT. And so we're now socially co learning with each other, which deepens the learning experience. And then if our manager comes along and says, hey, I want you to share what you learned about ChatGPT on this Slack channel with the organization, then you're introducing a skill to everyone. And so if companies can harness that flow of institutional knowledge and new information, that becomes a strategic advantage in things like problem solving and innovation, right? And so that concept to me of turning knowledge into a skill with an action as well as peer learning has really stuck with me a lot in my career. And then when you add in learning technology to the mix, so you really just get these richer learning experiences.
Completely agree. It seems like it's a fairly obvious one for us, like when we've done study and looked deeply into this, that learning off each other and having a peer discussion, learning together would be something that organisations should try to do. But it also seems to be something that organisations do the least often because it can be tricky. Have you seen the ability about these methodologies hold up when you've tried to launch them at scale?
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like the more we dig into all the new learning technology that's available to us in the ecosystem, there's just more that we can do that we didn't used to be able to do. Um, I've been in L&D roles for a long time, and we've had these methodologies and these concepts for, you know, many, many years. But in the last few years, we've got access to so many different types of tools that help enable learning at just a bigger global scale, even if your workforce is very dispersed. So, for example, we've recently brought in a toolkit of simulation tools that allow us to, with AI powered tooling, completely replicate the work environment virtually so we can replicate our apps. So if you think of Uber, David, your Uber app in Australia is not going to be my Uber app in the US. We're going to have different restaurants. And we need our support center staff to be able to know what those different apps look like so we can simulate our apps across our earners, our drivers, our riders. Um, and we can simulate our web systems that people are solving support tickets on. We can simulate customer interactions with a role play, which is very cool. So I feel like we have this ability to add experiential learning and social learning into what we're doing at global scale, but we have technology to really make it a lot easier than it used to be.
that for me sounds like it's going to have better outcomes as well, because when you got the I'm a huge fan of simulations because it does enable people to apply those skills. Like you said, we've learnt the application of skills is so important. Simulations and training are a great way to do that. Are you noticing the uptake of skills and the ability to be able to apply those skills in the workplace has improved since you've implemented those?
Yeah, I mean, we're still on the journey, so I feel like we will see more and more as we get further along in the journey. Um, I think that well, so just to back up and give a little context. So in my space, our learning audience is our customer support center agents. So these are the people who are answering help tickets. So I really feel like we're looking at impacting performance metrics for what they're expected to do in their day-to-day work. And so we can see an uptick in certain performance metrics that they're expected to do in their queues, which varies depending on what they're supporting. So that we have a really good business metric to look at and say, did the simulation help? The biggest place I think we're seeing simulations impact right now is in onboarding programs, because you can really build that confidence in a safe environment before sending them out into, production work.
Adina, before you were at Uber, you had a number of other roles as well, which would be great if you could sort of touch off a little bit on a bit of your background for Uber as well. Um, but what did you bring from those roles with you into Uber? And did you have to kind of rethink something once you got to Uber to sort of think, well, maybe that's not going to work here, which might have worked for me previously?
I think the big thing is a lot of my other roles were in different industries. So I had a lot of experience over the years. I was always in L&D roles. My scope always included L&D tech to some percentage. I would say the second half of my career has pretty much only been L&D tech. So I felt like I brought a fair amount of just historical industry experience, subject matter on the different tech and types of tech that was out there, the vendors that had been around, industry research. Um, but I think you know this. If you change companies, like a problem you solved in a prior company, that solution is not necessarily going to fit in a new environment with a new, population of people. Um, I will say, even like in my past roles, I had even worked with product teams to build tech and not just buy it and implement it. But when I got to Uber, it's a tech company. Like that's our core business, and so this concept of build versus buy, it's a very different conversation when you have top engineers in this world that, can partner and help you build something that you maybe would have never thought of building that by yourself before. And so I think, having conversations of discovery to say, like, what is the most, you know, profitable way to go after this, training gap we're trying to solve for, like this problem we're trying to solve for, and do we go source that in the market because there's a really good vendor? Or do we say, you know what, no, the vendors aren't impressing us. We're going to go down the path of building it ourselves. And so that was a huge mindset shift for me. Fortunately, we have some of the smartest people that I've ever worked with in this company, not just our engineers and product teams, just they're amazingly smart, but also just in my L&D department, like we have very bright people and we can come together and problem solve and find the best solution. So it's been very educational for me.
That's really interesting, having that capacity to build internally, because I imagine the rest of the organization want to reserve those engineers for building out product and developing those systems. Do you find you are given resources to do things internally, or do you have to fight for it?
Yeah, I mean, our support center staff who's answering help desk tickets, that's Uber's tech. And so the learning that we create is to help them know how to use that tech. And so there are ways to make business cases to show why it would be, a good use of engineering bandwidth to prioritize an L&D project. It's not easy, it's competitive. We go through a cycle yearly to put in intake for the following year of what we're trying to do. We have to have a business case, we have to have a problem statement, and show what we think the return on investment is going to be. But yeah, it is refreshing to be considered for those types of projects and to see what kind of ideas they can bring.
So let's talk about your cohort who you are training. So it's your global support team, right? So they are when we use the word global, does that mean they're located right across the globe and they're supporting a very large and diverse team of people, right? So how do you balance all of the logistics of that? Like, you got to be consistent, you got to do it quickly. What's your strategy and approach?
Our design teams have a very robust methodology, but you're right, the global complexity is tough. We can't just design stuff for 70 different countries, right? Like, we have to really think about, like, how do you do that? Um, we typically map out what is globally universal and standardize that, and that can become the greater piece of the training. And that way, when you pull out the pieces that are local nuance, it becomes a lower lift and we can be more efficient. Um, I think our tech stack also helps a lot with that because, like I mentioned with the simulations, we can kind of provide some of those local nuances. We have another piece of technology in our tech stack. It's a learning content management system, and that allows us to do um, reusable content authoring, which essentially means that we can assemble smaller pieces of courses and then you reuse certain things that belong more universally or maybe in a mega region, and then leave out the pieces that maybe apply to another region. And so I think that technology has really helped us speed up how we can address um, standardizing, but still getting the local nuance.
Have you started to look into using AI to personalize content for those different audiences? It feels like that's something that's just become viable in recent months.
That's very much our journey right now. With our LCMS, can tag metadata on our content, and that enables it for AI-powered learning experiences. So that's very much our North Star right now is finding the right tech that's gonna help us really personalize training in a way we haven't done before to get that, you know, AI-powered personalized performance support, and we're really invested in delivering in the flow of work.
What about, like, I imagine that applies to even things like translations as well. You're starting to use technology there to automate a lot of that.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk to you for hours about what we do in the translation space. Yes, we are fortunate because Uber has our own localization department, and so we have a team of engineers there and product teams that have built our tools, which is nice because it's going to hold, holds our vocabularies for us. But we have been able to integrate that with some of our tech vendors, which is a huge win because we might purchase an external tool that has a translation feature, but it doesn't have the level of, nuance that we're looking for. And so being able to integrate with our own translation service is a huge win and it speeds us up so we have those machine translations that we need.
Yeah, great. That makes sense.
So, and you've already discussed a few of your technologies that you're using, and it sounds like learning and technology plays a big part in delivering learning. With that in mind, how do you determine if something is worthwhile keeping and it's enabling learning as part of your technology, or is actually just one of those things that people are trying to avoid, which is the complexity?
Yeah, we have a very robust tech stack. And we've spent a lot of time working to integrate it. And that helps because then our learners don't necessarily know if they're going from system to system to learn something. But we really try to keep the complexity behind the scenes. Our learners, are getting a single point of entry or they don't have to have a whole bunch of clicks to get to what they're trying to find. And so I think that is very important. I think we still can do better there. And I think some of the AI solutions that we're looking for are going to help us be even better there. So 6 months from now, ask me that question again because I'm sure it's going to look very different. To give you an example of how we make sure it's working, so I'll give you an example. We implemented a digital adoption platform. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but basically, it's an application that lays on top of other applications and gives you contextual support help and pop-ups and tooltips and don't click here and click over here. And we really had no idea how people would react to that type of technology because it's a different way to learn. It's in the moment. It's in front of your work. And fortunately, we have good enough user analytics and user actions that we can track to see, how are they clicking on things, how much time are they spending, And in the beginning, they were clicking exit out of all
Yeah.
of the content. And so when we got talking to them, and we got more qualitative feedback about it, it was like, "Oh, this was in the way," or "It was popping up too many times in my workday," or whatever the situation was. And then we were able to use that feedback loop to then adjust how we design that and deploy that content. So I think it's great that we have the ability to have very robust quantitative data, but we also can collect that qualitative feedback.
This is like those you're talking about, like those virtual tour type things. They pop up and they're like, "Do you want to know how to do this?" And people just immediately dismiss it. So, what was the big shift you made so that people stopped dismissing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to just spend some time really observing how they use the tool, like really going out and watching learners interact with the tool because you can see like, oh, maybe I set that up to pop up, X number of times a day and they really only need it once. And just really getting close to the details so that we could say, what would be the right amount for what they're trying to do. And maybe there's people who are doing such, high important stuff that we just give them very exactly what they need. We also have the option to not have it pop up at them. There's ways to enable it so they can go pull it for themselves when they need it versus having it forced on them. So we had a lot of things that we could play with to kind of fit it for our audience.
Is it as sophisticated as being able to detect when someone's struggling and then come up and be like, "Okay, it looks like you need help in X or Y, Z?"
Not yet. Again,
Not
that's
yet.
our North Star. So I think it's gonna be, it does have the analytics. I think we need another layer that's gonna help do some of the other, recommendation things that we wanna do. Uh, but yes, very, very, North Star for us right now to get the full tech stack where we want it to be.
I mean, I think it's still miles ahead of many other organizations that always want to do in the flow of work learning, and just the practicalities of enabling it is just too difficult. So, yeah, sounds excellent.
What do you see as being the big thing that's going to happen for thinking about your workforce, frontline workers, gig workers, and what a lot of the work we do is in the frontline workers areas as well. So, what should we be prepared for? What should leaders be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think we can't have this conversation without addressing that like Gen AI is all anybody's talking about right now. And, I think that there's so much to be aware of in that space. And um, I think from my viewpoint, where I've been very invested in this past year, I would say is learning what the tools are capable of, how to use them, what's good use, what's bad use. I think it takes people to prompt Gen AI, right? And to work with agentic AI, it takes people prompting it, giving context, and that has to be quality, or you're not going to necessarily get quality out of it. And then you need somebody with a skill set on the other side to then check what it produces and say, is this correct? And is this what we want to use? And so from a leadership perspective, I feel like as we watch this tech evolve over the next, 6 to 12 months, our biggest role is giving our teams the ability to have access to tools, to have access to training, have time to practice and apply it. Like, how am I going to change this workflow tomorrow and really be challenged by leaders to really change their work. And I think that's really critical. And companies who embrace that, I think, have a bit of an advantage because we're more prepared to say, as this tech advances, are people ready for it? And so that's where I'm personally really spending a lot of time right now. And fortunately, I work for a company that had that philosophy of upskilling ourselves and having access to the tools and the training.
Fantastic. So that's all we had for today. Thank you so much for providing your insight. It's very valuable. I think that learners, they're really fortunate to have that kind of technologies that you're providing for them, because it sounds like they're really impactful and beneficial to them. So I'd love to hear how you're going further in your journey. Maybe we can check in another 6 months and see how much things have changed. But for today, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have a chat.
Yeah, it was awesome to catch up with you guys. Thank you very much for having me.